I move to approve the minutes.
Okay, we have a
Motion.
first. Second. Is there any discussion on the meeting minutes? Seeing none, all those in favor of approval of those minutes, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Seeing none, motion passes. And then we're going to move on to the public forum. So if you're new to the Parks and Rec Commission meetings, this is a time where people can approach community members can approach the commission to address items that are not on the agenda. So if you're here for Ada Hayden Heritage Park swimming tonight, or any of the other items in their director's report, we'll address those at a later time. So is there anyone here for just the public forum section? Seeing none, we'll move on then. And actually, we're going into the director's report now. And Keith, though, had asked that we're just going to move item B, which is our Ames on the Half Shell request, to our first item, because there's only one person here, and move on from there. So go ahead, Keith.
All right, so we have the Ames on the Half Shell request, and we'll have Craig kind of work through that with you.
So the request this year is fairly similar to what we've done in the past for what Commission has done in the past for the JCs. The one main difference that you'll notice, it's kind of outlined in the third paragraph. In the past, Commission has always waived the 10% on admissions, concessions, and alcohol sales. When we changed our fees in 2018 for the band shell, the 10% of the admission fees really no longer applies to groups unless that amount exceeds the hourly rental fee. So what does apply for groups now is a facility fee for any ticketed or event with an admission. For the JC, since their fees are $5, it would be a $1 facility fee. They are asking in that paragraph for a waiver on that fee as well. So the waiver that they're asking for is 10% of alcohol and concessions, and a waiver of the $1 facility fee, which is different than what they've asked for in the past. Everything else is fairly similar. That's really the only change from years past. So I'm not going to go through everything on here, but the alternatives, they are, again, very similar. The only difference would be the waiver of that facility fee is now a separate line on the alternatives for this year. And just, I did speak with police. There were really no incidents last year with the event. This event has a great history. And due to that history, we are recommending alternative one as listed on here.
Okay.
Any questions?
Any questions or discussion?
No.
I think it's a great event.
Yeah.
And a lot of the proceeds go back to, serve me right, go back to our scholarship funds,
Mhm.
correct?
Yeah, for the last 4 years, they've given $1,500 to our youth scholarship fund. And then they also do other events and activities for the community as well.
So, all right, so do we have a motion?
I'll motion to approve option one.
Second.
Okay, we have a first and second motion, which would be alternative one, which would be to approve the JC's request, which would then to sponsor the half shell utilizing Van Shell Park on 5 Fridays between May 31st and June 28th, with a band playing between the primary hours of 5 to 8, but no later than 8:30, and teardown completed by 9:30. And then it would go on beyond that. Would recommend City Council approve alcohol to be served at Van Shell Park on those same dates, and consumed in the fenced area no later than 9. And then we would then waive the JC's payment of $1 facility fee per ticket sold and the 10% gross food and beverage sales for their event. So any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes.
Thank you, Craig.
All right.
Okay, then we'll move on to the item 4A, which is the waiver of no swimming rule at Ada Hayden Heritage Park for a triathlon event. And we went through, in the last meeting, had a lot of conversation. You can see in the commission action form, did not repeat a lot of that same information, but yet tried to highlight the information that you had asked for or were wanting to get additional information on. So since then, I've had 2 individual meetings with Alex Silman from Iowa Multisport, and that's a change in the action form. We had it as True Time Racing the last time, and he corrected me that it's actually Iowa Multisport that's putting on the event. So change that in there. But we basically what we did through those conversations is trying to just discuss some of the items that the commission had concerns about. And then also you can see in one of the attachments, which was their draft safety plan and timeline and everything. So a lot of information that you talked about or asked about was put in there. And that's something that Alex had put together and has put together for other events. So what we did through those conversations, and just to kind of keep the ball moving forward, is I mentioned to him in our first meeting that what we'll do is we'll work through this stuff, and if commission says yes to waiving the no swimming rule, then a lot of this stuff is already moving forward, and we've already had the conversation, and we don't have to necessarily come back again to commission. If commission decides that they do not want to waive the no swimming rule, then they'll need to take a look for another location. So that was a lot of our conversation in regards to things. So in addition to those 2 meetings that I've had and some phone calls with Alex, Alex also did present to the special events committee for the city, filed an application, came, and then that timeline and safety plan that was shared at that meeting to the first draft of it. And through that, there was also, information and questions from police. There were some things regarding the bike route that we didn't necessarily like. They had the bike route going through the park. So what you see in the draft today is some of those changes from the special events committee meeting and also from the conversations that we've had. So I'm just going to highlight a few of the items on here. And if those of you in the crowd have not seen anything, you can go to our website, right, Kelly or Katie? And you could go to our website for Parks and Recreation and pull up all the information. But you can see there's a lot of correspondence as well for the waiving of the no swimming rule, and we shared some other things today. You got some information from Alex in regards to some additional letters that he didn't feel that you had received, and then since I sent this out earlier in the week, I had received additional correspondence as well, so I sent that to you also. So just a few things. The first one, the date of the event. Initially the request was for May 19th, Sunday, May 19th. And in conversations with Alex, just getting close, if a decision, if the commission again decides to waive that rule tonight, it's getting pretty close with then only a little over 2 months to promote. And he had asked if they could do it or move it to June 30th. We had conversation if we were going to move it, could we move it to even later than June 30th and try to get out of the summer months? So maybe even, late August or September. But one of the things with that he mentioned is that there is a national event. I believe it was in August. And then sometime in July, there's a regional event. So try to, this event, you can qualify for some of those other events. So it all does kind of fit into place. So we did in here, if the commission again decides to waive it, staff is good with the June 30th day. Now, one of the things that we talked about also is the impact on the park. And initially, we talked about maybe setting things up on Saturday night prior to Sunday, bike racks and things. And then we said, well, we don't really know if that's going to work too well because, there's a lot of people that stay in the park, throughout the day, and you're not going to may have all these cars out in a nice clear spot. You may have to wait for a while. And then it was questioned, well, could we go on Friday night and just block off those parking spots? When we get to Saturday night, then we can do that. So the conversation that Alex and I had, and I will say with the conversations with Alex, it's been very collaborative. It's been a good just discussion back and forth. It's been good conversations. So I'd share concerns, he'd share concerns, and we just kind of work through things. So what we came up with, and instead of initially they were maybe wanting to have people stay in the park overnight, to maybe have people drop off bikes on Saturday night and then have somebody there, security company, to watch them. So one of the things that we talked about is because once we get more into the summer, we even have more activity and so on. So what we said is if we do June 30th, then what we would prefer is that you just come in at 4 a.m. Park opens at 6, but come in at 4 a.m. and then get everything set up, have your event starting at 8 a.m. And then you can see the timeline that he said, probably by 11:30, noon, 12:30 at the very latest, they would be out of the park. So from that, we tried to narrow, the amount of time that they would be in the park. And again, all of this stuff is dependent on what the commission decides. So I'm not going to go through, the different events, but that was a question, and we just clarified, with them with the different types of events. Participant summary. I think Eve, you had asked a question about where people were coming from, and they did prior to 2017 have a different registration vendor, so they weren't able to access all of the information besides Ames and Story County. But what we did ask them for is just to get an idea of Ames, Story County, Central Iowa. That's where we went with the bordering counties, and then outside of that, and you can kind of see the numbers in between Ames and Story County. Just over the last 5 years, you're really talking about 20 to 26% of the people that are participating in this event, they're coming from Ames or Story County. So with the comparable lakes information, we did that, and we'll start with Copper Creek. So I'm not you can see the information there, but we did have, one of the questions that we did ask is what's the makeup of these parks and these lakes, and are we comparing apples to apples with Ada Hayden? And with Ada Hayden, and that's one thing that we didn't bring along is a map of Ada Hayden, but hopefully everybody can visualize what that looks like. But Ada Hayden is it's about 430 acres, and the lake itself is about 130 acres. So you have about 300 acres of non-lake at Ada Hayden. Now that 300 non-lake acres does include the wetlands on the west end, of the park. So with Copper Creek, you can see that it's about a 40-acre lake in a much smaller, about 70-acre park. And it's maybe not even that much with it, but so you can see that there's the lake, very similar to it was a mining operation and so on. So they do have the steep drop offs and everything, but you do see there is some residential around it. There's some business around it. Even kind of on that left side, there is a 4 Mile Creek that runs through there. It's kind of a barrier, and you see some more residential down there on the left, but not a lot of non-lake area with that. I did talk to Rick, who's the Parks and Recreation Director in Pleasant Hill, and he did confirm what Alex was saying last time, is that they've done this event. It's a good event. They clean up afterwards. They're organized and so on. And that's the information that I received from the individuals that I spoke with in regards to each of these. So if you go to the next one, Lake Pawtucka, which is part of Bondurant. So here you can see. So this is a much different setting. This is it's a man-made lake. It's only about 19 to 20 feet deep in its latest. Both of these and all three of them do not have any swimming, or they have no swimming throughout the course of the years except for these events. But again, you can see with this one, with Lake Pawtucka, 18 acres, part of maybe about a 40-acre area, and with it. So again, no swimming. But Molly, who I spoke with, who's Parks and Recreation Director there, again, no issues. And both of them asked, what is the community like? There's a little bit more of a vibe from Pleasant Hill, because it is there are residential people around, there are residential homes. People have a more understanding of the event going on. Molly said that most of their residents probably don't even know that it happens because of where it is. It's located on the north side of the town. You have the agricultural fields, you have the sport complex. So unless they're going out there for something, they probably don't even know that the event is happening with it. But again, she said that they're organized, unlike some of the other groups that they have worked with for different types of events in their community. So again, positive feedback. And then with the next one with Fiddler Pond, which is in Goshen, Indiana. Now this one I was not able to hook up with the contact there. But again, this is you can see more of a quarry type of lake. They have that industrial area up there on the one side. And again, you got the fairgrounds that's up on the top of the picture there, and you got some residential around the rest of it, and you got kind of a main road, through there. But again, this is not an area that has a lot of non-lake parkland with them. So that's one of the three things with all three of these lakes or these venues for their triathlons. They just some of the lakes are similar, but the parks themselves aren't necessarily similar to Ada Hayden because they don't have a lot of the natural areas, and they don't have 300 acres of non-lake park to go with their lakes. So, but again, the feedback that I got from the individuals that I was able to contact was all positive in regards to that. They didn't have any issues with the swimming. They had no swimming the rest of the time, and they didn't feel that any of these events wound up creating any additional swimming issues with it. Now, I will say also that with it, they don't monitor it. Their lakes in Bondurant and Pleasant Hill. So unless somebody was going by and seen it, kind of like with us as well, they don't know if there's a lot of issues with the swimming. But what they've seen or have been made aware of, it hasn't been an issue. One of the other things, and I'll just highlight, I'm not going to go through all the individual topics there, but the participant education regarding no swimming, that was something that we had conversation about, and you can see that they put down, 8 different ideas in regards to helping educate the athletes and the registrants in regards to no swimming at other times and so on. So I already talked about the special events committee. They went there, and again they've worked through some items on that end as well. Now, I do know also with this is that last time we did say that if commission did approve this, there would be a number of requirements, and one of those requirements would be getting approval from the DNR, and the DNR has given them approval, and it's more so from their approval from the DNR and my conversations with individuals, it's not so much about the event or anything along those lines. It's more so safety, and do you have things in place that are going to provide a safe environment? So that's really how they determine whether or not they approve it. But they have approved that as well. Now, one of the issues for this also is the gas engines. Right now there is a city ordinance that does not allow gas engines at Ada Hayden. We have in the past, just given some okays in regards to for safety issues. But like I told Alex, had the conversation with him, and because it is an ordinance and with city council, they would have to waive, that. So that would be something, depending on what commission says, then we would need to take that to the council and have them weigh in on waiving the gas engines, because right now it's all electric. And this would be something that, not just for this event, but it'd be something that we would do for GAR as well with it. Now, we also do at times have some training that Ames Fire or Story County Dive Team, they may be doing some training out there, and we've have allowed them to go out there with their gas engines and as well. So it's something that we need to take up with council, but depending on what commission decides to do. So with the alternatives, so there are, and I sent out a revised CAF earlier today with it, and it was something that I missed, but Alex brought it to my attention, so it said I'd change it so everybody has the right information. So alternative one would be to approve the request and waive the no swimming rule and be from 7 to 10 a.m. The swimming starts at 7. We did talk about allowing some time for warm-ups prior to the start of the race. And then, if you looked at their timeline and everything, you potentially could have people totally out of the water by 8:30, 8:45. However, if there is any weather issues or something, it allows, some flexibility. So that would be on Sunday, June 30th. And then also with that, park hours are 8 a.m. to 10:30 p.m. or 6 a.m. I should say 6 a.m. to 10:30 p.m. And if somebody wants to be in the park prior to or outside of those hours, they have to get written permission from the commission. So that's the second part is if commission feels that's the way to go, he would give them permission to enter the park at 4 a.m. Alternative 2 is to deny the request to allow swimming in Ada Hayden. And 3 would be refer back to staff a second time if you so chose with that. With all of this, and with it, and I think you're going to be hearing, and I'm not going to do that, but I know there's a couple of members from the triathlon that want to speak or potential triathlon. There's a couple of members from Friends of Ada Hayden, that want to speak. So I'll let them, make their comments and with it. So really, as far as the staff recommended action, staff has not changed their position, from the last meeting. We still feel that it's best just to enforce the no swimming all the time, and shared, thoughts on that last time. We just feel that's the best way to go. And so we haven't changed our position, but as you can see in the recommendation, if council or commission, if you feel that it's setting a bad precedent by allowing this, and there will be other groups that will be coming in and it could get out of control, then staff would recommend that you approve alternative number 2, which is to deny the request. If you feel that with everything that they have in place and through the conversations and it's a safe activity and event, if commission feels that that's a good thing and you're comfortable with how they're doing that, then alternative number 1 would be the choice. So, questions?
Are the other parks and rec departments that you spoke with, have they received additional requests throughout the year with other like groups to waive that?
You know, the only thing that I am going to say that they have not, we didn't specifically talk about that, but in it, they did share that this is either one of one or one of two events that they host with it. So I did not specifically ask that question.
Any other questions for Keith? All right. So I guess we're going to open up the floor. And I have a few speaker cards here. Well, I think I've got them in the order that I received them. So, but before we go, I don't know how many emails we've gotten. Tons, and there's been trust me, I have read through all of them.
Yes.
So if there are themes in those emails that are similar, know that those thoughts have been heard. So if you have other thoughts or concerns to bring to the table, though, you're more than free to do that, though. So Tim, if you would like to start us out. If you just would state your name and your address, that would be fantastic. And we'll go from there.
Is there a time limit? You said a time limit.
I don't know, do we?
Yeah.
Can you keep it under 3 minutes?
I'll try.
Okay.
You know the answer, but I'll try.
I know.
Okay.
Oh, okay.
First of all, thanks for having us back. I was planning on not going first, so I kind of have to reformat on the fly, but that's okay. Kelsey, I think you were absent last time.
Yeah.
But obviously you're up to speed. So the first thing I'd like to say is that Alex has put in countless hours. We basically work on different shifts. So I'm waking up and getting emails that he just wrote. Sometimes it's hard to coordinate with somebody that works on a different shift like that, but we've made it work. First class, he's gone above and beyond. I think the theme that we established after the last meeting was working in cooperation and adopting that as a mentality instead of us versus them, of what do we have to do to make this happen? So, like I said, I was planning on him going first, but he's going to speak, so I don't need to take any of his thunder. One of the individuals that cannot be here today is a physically challenged athlete. You have a letter from that individual. Mm-hmm. They had a medical procedure on Monday and didn't want to come medicated. And so I approve of that. Instead of just reading the letter, I'll just paraphrase that, and it's a lady. She'd love the opportunity to do something that basically able-bodied people don't even think about. So in this case, she's paralyzed, waist down, and then had a surgery. So currently sort of has only one working hand. It'd be a great opportunity. There's already people that I have lined up that would be willing to do the event with her as a team, or even the opportunity for her to do it by herself. So in short, obviously you've seen the documentation. Mm-hmm. I wanted to speak on her behalf because she can't be here today. In the theme of cooperation, I've sent more than one, but not countless, emails to members of the Friends group about what is it going to take to make this happen. I'm not sure how I say this without having it sound as a us versus them mentality. Our group that supports this initiative has done everything asked and beyond. What I'm seeing is no from the other side. We don't want it. Not even any kind of common ground, middle ground, ways that we can involve their group. My hope is, if the approval is granted, that we can add them to the ever-growing list of individuals that said, hey, if you get the approval, put me down to volunteer. I mentioned some of those groups last time. I'm not going to go into that just to be redundant for me to say the same thing 17 times. So I think we've more than shown that we want to work with individuals. And if I'm wrong, I would gladly be corrected today that that group is willing to work with us to make this happen. As Keith stated, they're still in opposition and saying no against our case. But I'm just asking for a yes. So is that 3 minutes?
Probably more than.
Close
No,
enough.
nicely done.
Okay.
Thank you, Tim.
Thank you.
Thanks. And with that, Alex, if you'd like to come on up.
Yes, sir. Yes. Let me know. Sure.
And if you could just state your name and address for the record, that'd be awesome.
Sure. My name is Alex Silman. I reside at 1828 East Thornton Avenue in Des Moines, Iowa, 50320. I want to thank the commissioners and Keith again for the opportunity to speak today. And also thank Keith and Josh for taking time to meet with us several times since our last commission meeting. I'm also going to be operating on the fly. Keith had covered some of the stuff in my remarks, so I'm just trying to figure out what I can skip here. Since the last meeting, we've been working hard to gather more information, refine our timeline and safety plan, and start additional permit processes like Keith had mentioned. I won't cover the date change. That's already been covered. One thing I would add to it too is that in looking at temperature data for that lake, it is also much warmer on June 30th and May 19th. We're still in the wetsuit legal temperature zone in June, so we still have the benefit of allowing athletes to wear wetsuits at that time, which makes them more buoyant and arguably more safer. We have also, in meeting with Keith, asked, what could we do to find common ground with the Friends of Ada Hayden? And I believe Keith had talked to them in between two of our meetings to see if there's, ways we could work together. I think that some of the feedback that Keith got is reflected in the changes made in the draft number 2. Such as when we start, not setting up on Saturday, how we enter and exit the park. The 4 a.m. start time was a product of those conversations, and we said yes to all of them. Swim, entrance, and exit. You guys had asked for more information about that at the last meeting, so I'll just read through a quick description of that. The boat ramp would be covered with carpet, so it was easy on the feet. The end of the boat ramp would be marked with a 4-foot tall channelizer cone, which would be weighted down. This would mark the end of the boat ramp, so athletes know where they should push off and when they're coming back, also where they can put their feet down. Volunteers, lifeguards would be there to help them get their feet underneath them. One swimmer would start on average 5 seconds. We say a range of 3 to 5 seconds. Again, that allows us to control the inflow of swimmers to the water and maintain safety ratios. Talked about that. The comparable lakes information, some of that I'll skip. I also brought satellite images, which you've already seen. Keith's description of the lakes seem accurate. While they are different, they all have different surroundings. Some of them rural, some of them have playgrounds, volleyball courts, baseball courts, businesses, residential. The overarching thing is that they don't allow swimming there. They allow an exception for a triathlon. All of them have reported no swimming incidents that are because of the triathlon being there. while they all have hosted a triathlon for several years, they haven't had, as Sarah's question was alluding to, they haven't had multiple requests. They're not hosting a swimming event in their lakes every weekend throughout the summer. Swimmer education plan, we came up with a lot of ideas. Two of them that are new that weren't part of the plan the last time we talked are each registrant would be required to check a box when they register that says, I understand that there is no swimming in Ada Hayden Lake, and that I'm only allowed to swim there during the event on June 30th. Second statement, and they would have to check a box indicating that they read and understood it. A second statement similar to that below it that says, I understand that if I'm found to be swimming in Ada Hayden Lake prior to race day, I will not be allowed to participate on race day and will not receive a refund under any circumstance. Again, they're having to check a box, and it lets them know how seriously we take the rule. Statement of support. Those have been alluded to already. I just wanted to highlight two of them quickly. One is from the head ranger at Hickory Grove Park, where the triathlon has lived for the last 15 years. I'll just read you some quotes from his statement. And I'm quoting, I look forward to hosting the event annually. We host a number of events every year, and this is by far the easiest one to manage. Alex and his staff do a great job at organizing, communicating, and hosting the event. Setup is very professional. Post-race, I've always been impressed with the staff's attention to detail and leaving no trace of the event behind. And lastly, the triathlon would be a positive light on your beautiful park. The second statement of support is from a para-triathlete that we had kind of talked about that last time. This one in particular is from Brian Norberg, who is an experienced para-triathlete. He says, hi, everyone. I'm a disabled triathlete in the area who has competed in multiple races run by Alex. I'm very excited about the possibility of having a race in Ames this summer, accessible to those with disabilities. The course would be perfect for amputees, visually impaired athletes, and those competing in wheelchairs because of the paved surfaces, easy transitions, and space available for necessary equipment. Alex has even engaged USA Para Triathlon to get the course certified para-friendly. This designation is very important and will be attractive to athletes all over the Midwest looking for races. I anticipate it would be very well attended. It would also be a tremendous opportunity to introduce triathlon to people with disabilities in Central Iowa. Being an ISU grad student, I know the city of Ames does a great job making the community accessible, and supporting this race would be another example of that. And again, just highlighting that the opportunity to host this event at Ada Hayden would allow para-triathletes to participate where they weren't able to before. Just in summary, it seems that the two main points against the waiver are what precedent it would set. Would there be a multitude of other races that come in, to the park and want to host swimming events? And then the second is that the other 364 days, would there be incidents? While there may be other requests to use the lake, we simply have to look at the neighbors to Ames that have these lakes and allow swimming exceptions to know that you're not going to be overrun with people requesting to swim. There may be one, there may be two, but as Keith stated earlier, there's not multiple requests. There's not going to be a request to swim in Ada Hayden every weekend throughout the summer. And again, as I already stated, all these lakes share that thing in common, that there's no incidents outside. So we're not having to guess about if there will be incidents. We can look at these other communities and know that, putting the triathlon on isn't going to encourage more people to swim. Rick, who Keith had mentioned before, said, if someone goes in that lake to swim, it's because it's 90 degrees out and there's a lake there. It's not because the triathlon was held there for a few hours during the summer. we hope that after reviewing all the information and letters of support, you give us the opportunity to bring a triathlon to Ames, and I respectfully ask the commission to choose option 1, approving the requested swim waiver. Thank you again for your time and consideration and opportunity to speak, and I'd be happy to answer any questions you have.
I have a question.
Mhm.
First of all, the letter from the ranger, he also had said at the end of his letter that he hoped to have the event back next year. Does that change your request that this is actually going to be an annual request for Ada Hayden?
No, we're not going to call this Hickory Grove Park in Ada Hayden. This is going to have a new name, Ames Triathlon, Tri-Ames, something similar to that. If and when Hickory Grove Park fills back up and it's accessible to swimmers, we could look at that when it happens. But there's no guarantees of that. And if that race were to come back, it would be called Hickory Grove Triathlon and not Ames Triathlon.
Also, the para-athletes, are they not allowed to compete now at Hickory Grove?
It's not a question of they're not allowed to. It's that if you've ever been to Hickory Grove, you'll know that there's a very steep slope coming out of the water with, Keith, how many stairs are there? 50, 100? I don't know.
Quite a few. I don't know the actual number, but it's quite a few.
I couldn't push a wheelchair up that hill. People who are in a chair could not. There's no ramp. The first mile of running is on a multitude of pavement, not pavements, anything but pavement, cinder trail, grass, wood chips, prairie grass, it goes through trees, gravel, etc. Again, not good for if you have a carbon fiber leg or you're in a wheelchair or a hand bike.
Just want to kind of ask a question because it was brought up that one of the key differences between Ada Hayden Park and all the other comparable parks that were mentioned before was the fact that we have a lot of parkland around our lake, and therefore there is a possible threat to local wildlife and environmental degradation. So I just wondered, do you have an answer for that type of concern? Because that seemed to me one of the paramount concerns from the Friends of Ada Hayden was just the threat to the surrounding environment from the event. Do you have any way of answering that or a way of kind of assuaging their concerns?
Sure. So if we look at the areas where the wildlife are, and where, there's a parking lot, that's where the bikes are going to be. I don't think having a bike on a bike path or a bike in the parking lot is going to be any more intrusive to the geese or the fish than the parking lot just being there is, or cars. A car coming in to the park, has a better chance of running over a goose than a bike, I don't think the DNR, if there was endangered species or something there, we hunt geese in Iowa. We catch fish out of our lakes. If there was an issue there, I don't think the DNR would approve it. They are the protectors of our natural resources, and they, as Keith mentioned, had already approved of the event. And that was a question that I asked Susan, is there a concern for wildlife, geese, ducks, et cetera? And she said not a significant, influence that would prevent this event from happening for 2 or 3 hours one day during the summer.
Any other
So
questions
the
for Alex?
DNR is covered. They're good.
And there is, so the DNR approved their permit to use the lake for swimming.
So
But that's in, it's kind of, and I didn't mention this earlier, but now that you asked the question, is conditional on the local agency giving approval for the event.
Mhm.
So just the fact that they say yes, we give you approval to swim in the lake,
Mhm.
doesn't give them approval to have the event. That's what the commission has.
Right. The DNR, if there was going to be some significant impact, would have probably denied that request, I would guess, correct?
Well, one thing is, I don't know, Jeff, would you like to maybe come up and answer a couple of those questions? Just in regards to maybe just a little bit in regards to what does the DNR look at? Because I know you're not looking to say, given an opinion, that's not what we're asking for. Maybe you can just at least share what it is that you do look at for approving.
Thank you, Alex.
Any other
You're
questions
done.
for me?
Okay.
No.
Okay.
Thank
All
you.
right. Thank you.
Thanks, Alex. Sorry to put you on the spot, Jeff.
I was hiding in the corner.
As much as a 6'7" guy can hide, right?
My name is Jeff Kapaska. I live at 2529 Northwood Drive here in Ames. I work for the Iowa Department of Natural Resources. I oversee the technical aspects of the special event system, which is what gave the approval from the state side. So the state in-state code has a requirement for any event taking place on public water to provide the approval to allow that to occur. So what the state does is look to see if the people that are sponsoring the event have provided adequate information about what's going on and have provided information so that the participants will be safe during the course of that event. And and potentially also, do they have insurance liability coverage, things like that. So the local conservation officer here in Story County has reviewed the application. He sent that to Susan Stocker, who is the boating law coordinator for the state of Iowa. She has reviewed the application, and according to what the state needs to review, this event is okay. And now I made sure that in that it said that it requires the city's approval also for that event to occur. And basically what you're saying is whether or not the swimming can occur and whether or not you want something of this fashion at your location, which you already do with like Iowa Games and GAR and things of that ilk. And you also ask questions about the other communities. Every special events application that occurs in the state comes across my desk. Nothing else of this ilk happens at Patoka. Nothing else of this ilk happens at Copper Creek. It happens at Don Williams. It's happened at Hickory Grove. Those are basically, they are fulfilling the local need for this type of an event. So nothing else like this really occurs. So. And I was also, I think I've been called by at least 3 or 4 individuals about different aspects of this thing. I was asked about the water temperature information also because in my previous life, I kind of oversaw all of the water quality sampling at Ada Hayden. And I think it's very appropriate that it get moved later into June because the water temperatures are much more amenable for the swimmers at that point in time. And probably the last thing that I can factually speak to before I have to leave and go coach is the water clarity at Ada Hayden is really excellent, and most of the concerns about swimming and other things like that, one was the safety of the swimmers because of the steep sides. The steep sides at Copper Creek are exactly the same, the bathymetry, and even though Patoka is not as deep, it is also a surface mine, a borrow pit. That land was taken out for the bridge overpasses, so it also has not as steep of sides, not as deep, but the lake functionally is the same at Patoka and Copper Creek as it is at Ada Hayden. Bacteria are the biggest thing to get rid of bacteria is sunlight, and the water clarity at Ada Hayden is exceptional. So any bacterial concerns from the swimmers, the water clarity is going to take care of those concerns.
Very good information.
Did he answer your question?
That's awesome.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right.
Factual, no opinion.
And sorry to put you on the spot, Jeff, but thank you.
Thank you. All right. We're going to move on to Wolfgang. You just want to still state your name and address. That would be great.
Wolfgang Erstreich, 2001 Wingate Drive, Ames. I'm a member of the Friends of Ada Hayden, plus I'm a park user. I'm there daily, and Well, Josh knows that, and knows Keith too. I mean, I spend 3 hours there almost every day. I keep track of all the mammals, the birds, the dragonflies, the butterflies, the reptiles, amphibians, and I talk to a lot of people out there. After reading everything that was on the website and what I've heard today, I'm going to speak more as myself, as an individual, because we have Jim here who could speak as the Friends group. I'm neutral on this activity. I don't think it's going to be as big of a problem as maybe I thought in the beginning. But I do have some concerns, mainly it's like parking. Parking's supposed to be only on paved surfaces, but a lot of the events end up parking on the grass and everything. And if we have a rain event, right before that, that could be a problem. When we had the trout release this last winter, someone ran over one of the signs on the grass. So, I'm worried about that. And I do have remain concerned about gas-powered motors on the lake. As I said, I'm out there all the time. Every time we have an event that uses a gas-powered boat, I get contacted by the fishermen as I ride around saying, why do they get to use it and we don't? I said, well, talk to Keith. That's the policy. And so I do that. I mean, you can use canoes, kayaks, or electric motor boats, have them stationed around for safety purposes. You don't need to use gas-powered motor on the lake. So that's what I have to say. Any questions?
Any other questions for Wolfgang?
No, thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you for coming up.
And Christina Swanson? Sorry. Hello again.
Hello, it's good to be back here. I'm Christina Swenson. I'm at 221 Sheldon Avenue. I'm in Ames here. And today I think I'd just like to share a little bit more of a personal story. I first came across triathlon at the age of 8. I was in swimming lessons, and my swimming lessons instructor said, "You're a really good swimmer, and there's this really cool event that's happening this weekend that I think you should do. It's a triathlon. You swim and you bike and you run, and you'd be really good at it." So I, of course, was super excited and empowered by this trusted adult, and brought the flyer home to my mom and said, "Mom, I really want to do this triathlon this weekend." And she said, "Okay, well, when, where is it and when it is?" And I said, "Well, it's, on Saturday." And it was Wednesday. And she said, "People don't just do these things, Christina. Like, they train for months and months for these things. Like, you can't just do one this weekend." And I said, "Well, why not?" And, of course, my stubborn 8-year-old self somehow convinced her to bring me there on Saturday. And I did it, and I fell in love, and it became my favorite day of the summer every year. And I think when I was 13, I did my first adult triathlon, and then the next year it was 2, and then 4, and then 8. And now I've traveled across the world and will be competing with Team USA at the World Championship in Lausanne, Switzerland this fall. So it really has become a whole lifestyle for me. It's the reason that I chose Iowa State. It's the reason I lead the healthy, active lifestyle I do. I believe it's the reason I get good grades in school and am productive and have really healthy relationships. It's the reason I've met all these people in this room here. And it really has impacted my life, and not just my life, but my family too. After watching me, my dad said, "Well, if my 10-year-old daughter can do this, I could probably do this too." So he started doing triathlons. And this last year, he recently lost 30 pounds and has now decided that he's going to do a half Ironman. So that was a really big accomplishment for him. My younger brother has said, "Well, if my big sister's doing it, then I'm going to do it." So now he's doing it. Now he's a 3-sport athlete, and he's winning all kinds of awards in and out of the classroom because of his love for endurance sports that came because I did a triathlon. My mom, who has had rheumatoid arthritis and bad car accidents and who was told could never run, has done a triathlon because her family did it and she wanted to try something new. So I share this story with you to know and recognize how much of an impact this can have on not only one person's life, but the life of a family, of someone who chooses to do a triathlon. And people do triathlons because of an invitation from someone else. And when you have a great group of people like this here who live in the Ames community and love this community and will reach out a hand to another Ames community member and say, "Hey, there's this really cool event that we're hosting at Ada Hayden. I want you to come try it." And if we had everybody in this room do that to one person, think about the impact that we could have in this Ames community on the people who live here. Not to mention the fact that The obesity epidemic is real, and it's one of the biggest things that we face here in this country. And in a sport like triathlon, an invitation to do something like that really could drastically change somebody's life for the better. Additionally, to the point of, I understand and appreciate the concern about the parks as a race director here with the Iowa State triathlon team. And I've had race directing experience back home with one of the largest nonprofit organizations that produces one of the largest kids events across the world. We have 700-800 kids who come 4 times a year and are participating in races in the Three Rivers Park districts. If any of you that are familiar with Minnesota, it's the largest park system. They make exceptions for our races. We have 700 kids that come traipsing through these parks, and they love it, and they want us back every year in every event. So I think there are lots of states that have examples of these great programs that are getting people active and outside and bringing them to the parks, because there are a lot of people that don't know Ada Hayden exists. And if an event like this could get them both outside and active, potentially change their life and get them to one of your parks, I think it would be a win-win for everybody. So thank you for your time. And unless anybody has any questions for me.
Any questions?
No.
Great.
All right. Thank you
so much.
Thank
Next up, Laura.
Thank you. I'm Laura Moeller. I'm not actually an Ames resident, but I work here in Ames. I'm at 1903 Southwest Vintage Parkway in Ankeny.
Okay.
I come today representing the Triathlon Racers of Iowa. I'm a board member and very active, avid triathlete. I also represent medicine as a primary care physician here in the community of Ames. I'll be brief. I'll say from a little bit different standpoint, but a little along the same theme as Christina. I see this as a fabulous opportunity for the city to promote health and wellness amongst the community. Also, as a triathlete involved in probably all of the different triathlons across Iowa over the last 6 years, I can speak from the experience of triathlons bringing together all kinds of different individuals. I haven't had a lot of races that there have been para-triathletes involved, and I do agree that this is an awesome facility to have the capability of promoting para-triathletes competing as well. So I think that that's something extra special about Ada Hayden. I work out at Ada Hayden routinely. I run the path. I know it's smooth. I know it's safe. I feel very confident that this would be a phenomenal location for a triathlon, and I've thought that for years since Ada Hayden's been in existence. I hope you'll strongly consider giving this a shot. If it doesn't go well, we tried it. At least we gave it an opportunity. Thank you for the opportunity. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And then the last speaker card that I have, not to say that you can't still approach the podium, but Jim Pease.
Yeah, thanks for having me back again. I want to explain a little better why we rise in opposition to this this permit. My name is Jim Pease. I live at 3840 Stagecoach Road, and I'm president of the Friends of Ada Hayden Heritage Park. I want to say initially that if I heard the first two gentlemen right, that they contacted the Friends of Ada Hayden, I haven't received any contact from them since before or since the last meeting. So they may have contacted other board members, but they did not contact me. So we have not been approached by these folks. Ada Hayden Park is a park unlike any other in the Ames Park system. Yes, it has a lake, and that alone makes it different. But unlike other Ames Park, Ada Hayden has a wild character about it. It does not have ball fields. It doesn't have golf courses, tennis courts, brightly colored plastic playground equipment. None of those would be in keeping with the wild character of this park. Yes, it has trails that invite people to use it, to walk, to bike, to run, to access that wild character. Some trails are paved, but others are not, making the accessibility variable to meet the various needs of the people who come to that park. It's a former industrial site, a brownfield, if you will. It was recreated into a park to do several things. Number one, to protect the high quality water in this former quarry as an indirect backup water source for the city of Ames. You know that. Secondly, to provide ecological services for the area, including stormwater wetlands on the west and the south sides, which cleanse stormwater runoff before the water gets into the lake. And secondly, for wildlife habitat. Thirdly, it was created to protect and improve the remnants of prairies and savannas that are found on the site. And surveys were done ahead of time, extensive surveys, documented a few remnants here and there. And fourth, then, to provide recreational benefits to the people of Ames and Story County that are compatible with the other uses, the other purposes of the park. Towards that end, rules were put in place to help maintain those purposes for the safety not only of the people of Ames and surrounding area, but for the park itself. They include no swimming in the lake, no motors other than the small electric ones in the lake's waters, no motorized use of the trails, a management plan for vegetation that mimics the practices in which the native plants evolved. Things like fire on the prairies, goats in the savannas that mimic, sort of replace, if you will, the elk that created savannas and help not only create them, but manage them as well. Mowing is kept to a minimum. There are no lights on the trails. It's difficult, I think, to maintain a park with a wild character in the midst of 21st century urban areas. And there are constant demands on you and on the park to compromise, to modernize, chinking away, I think, at the wild character of a park. Pave all those trails. Make sure they're well lit. Put in active recreation like courts and courses and equipment. Mow all that pesky vegetation that contains snakes and spiders and other scary things. Make all our parks alike. Each new recreational adventure, if you will, is another chink, removing eventually the wild character of the place. But I submit that it's precisely the wild character of this park that attracts so many people to Ada Hayden. The opportunity to see wild trumpeter swans, to watch a dragonfly catch insects, especially mosquitoes, over the water, to watch, see prairies in full bloom, watch a rare savanna come back to life, to watch bald eagles eat ducks on the winter ice as they did this winter, to fish in a lake that actually has clear water, as Jeff was talking about earlier. I hope that this commission's role is to help us protect the wild character of Ada Hayden Park. The Friends Group does this every single day of the year, providing education to the using public, helping to remove non-native invasive species, supporting the Parks Department in managing the prairies, savannas, woodlands, and wetlands, recording all the other species, as Wolf talked about, all the other species besides humans, that is, that are using the park. I invite you to check that out by going to our blog spot, adahaydenpark.blogspot.com, and you can see some of the kinds of things. If you've not been out there for spending every day like Wolf does there, you can see the kinds of things that are there. Our job and yours, I think, becomes more difficult as the park is surrounded by more human development and human use increases. More and more demands are placed on you, and especially on the wild systems of the park. Keeping incompatible uses away from the park becomes increasingly difficult, but that's your job. I believe, and we, the Friends of Ada Hayden Heritage Park, believe that the proposed triathlon, which allows both swimming and motorized use of the lake, is one of those incompatible uses. Will the world end? Will the park be destroyed if you allow this exception for one day for an activity that seems to be otherwise good for Ames and certainly good for the athletes that have spoken here today and will participate in the event? Certainly not. But I can hear that clink of erosion, of the chipping away at the wild character of the park. So I ask you to reject the request, regretfully, especially since there are alternatives. Hickory Grove is not an alternative this year, but Peterson Pits is an alternative. Not as perfect, perhaps, as Ada Hayden, but it is an alternative. I think that is an activity that's incompatible with the wild character of the park. So I ask you to reject it. Thank you. Questions?
Any questions for Jim?
Nope.
Okay, thanks. Thank you.
Thank you.
Do we have any other speakers? Mr. Beerbaum.
Ed, how you doing?
I'm doing great.
So I thought I'd.
If you could just speak your
Oh.
name and address, that would be fantastic.
3222 Tupelo. And I know you all well. So as a triathlete in the community and as someone that's very passionate about our park system, I was really interested in this, excited with it. I've tried to find ways to get the community involved in things like this in the past because there are some awesome things we have, like the Midnight Madness and some of the runs we have out at Ada Hayden and Gar. Those are awesome. The kids get involved, the community gets involved, they love it. Alex does some great events other places. And ever since I've heard of this, I've been very excited to see if there's some way that we could do this type of thing. Because you talk about Hickory Grove and the attendance and how many people from Ames, a lot of people in Ames don't even know where Hickory Grove is, right? I think this is going to be well attended by people from Ames that hear about it. As a previous speaker said, and you just say, hey, do you want to come? It's not that bad. You swim 500 meters, you're out, you ride around. It's a great event. Talked to many people around the community from all walks of life, and everybody that I've talked to loves the idea. I know there was some discussion about, well, what will people think if they see people swimming? I'm going to take my kids there because I want them to see people swimming, see people doing this type of stuff. They've seen things like this before. They love it. The kids love it. Everybody gets good pieces from it. The one thing I would say is in the past when I had talked to Keith about could we do something like this, we didn't have somebody like Alex. I mean, Alex does first class everything with this. I remember I had an argument with him through email one time. He probably doesn't even remember it, when the water quality wasn't quite good enough at Hickory Grove, so he didn't allow people to swim. And I was like, but I've been practicing there for a week and swimming in that junk. Why are you doing this? So he takes safety very seriously, is where I'm going with that. I guess the thing I would say is, having served in positions like yours, right? This is a great event. The thing that always comes back to is, how do you balance community member input? So the friends groups and the staff. The friends groups, I agree, Ada Hayden is great. I wouldn't want it to impact the wildlife any more than anybody else. As far as parking and motorized boating, I know Alex has some answers from that. It was in some of the information I saw one time, where parking will be remote. And the motorized boats, I think he could clarify it, but if I remember right, it's not for the support swimmers. It's if somebody on the off chance does have an issue, fire rescue would use a motorized boat to get there quicker to save somebody's life, which I think that's a reasonable thing to say, is if the firefighters there want to use a motorized boat, they might need to. As far as the wild character of the park, I respectfully disagree in that I agree it's got a wild character. I think this is a compatible use, though. I mean, really, at the end of the day, we have runs out there. It's awesome to run out there because it is so wild. That's why people like to have 5Ks out there. This, in my book, is very similar. So I think it would be very compatible and it would be a great use for the park. Now, I think the more difficult thing, having sat in your situation, is you never really want to go against staff, right? You never want to go against friend groups either. I mean, I've seen where we've had to in the community. There's other friends groups that love different parks, and that's what you guys have to do that's tough, is balance that. Sometimes you have to make votes that the friends groups aren't happy with, but that doesn't mean it's wrong. As far as staff's recommendation, I greatly respect what Keith is saying and the position he's coming from. But I think that he's laid out in the action form what the path would be forward if you decide you want to go against that recommendation. because I think Keith needs to hold true to the condition that he sets for the rules, but that doesn't mean that he won't adapt and make this successful. As you've heard, he's worked with Alex, it's been very collaborative. Alex, I know, has really enjoyed that. I think it can be a great thing that Park and Rec can help out with. So in closing, I would just love to see you guys approve this because I think it'd be an awesome event for the community. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Alan.
Anyone else that would like to approach the podium? All right. So I guess we'll move on to discussion.
I just appreciate all the work that Alex has gone to since the last time we met. He's worked hard, and everybody out in the crowd has worked hard on addressing these issues that we had, clarifying things we needed clarified. I'm really impressed with the mobilization of the community and all the positive comments we've heard about Alex and the way he runs things. So it's very impressive. It's the most I've heard out of any issue since I've been part of the board. So
I just want to speak briefly to the triathlon club members' comments. Previously, like seeing Keisha here today, she had been a coach with the Ames Parks and Rec for many years, and I did a running program with her. And I was just thinking about, I'm sorry, what was your name again? Christina's comments about I
closed the speaker thing.
Just about how having these events in the community really raises awareness about health and fitness within the community. And when I was training with Keisha, the first time we were training for Dam to Dam in Des Moines, which is not a local event. And wouldn't it be amazing to, we think about the Healthy Life Center and we think about the all of these initiatives to get people more active and in the community, and to have a training program for this triathlon in the future. And you are having just a combination of all these, parks and recreation programs for training, a future park and rec facility with the Healthy Life Center, and then an event that, could be a real collaborative event between the community, the triathlon community, and also the city. So I guess I see that as a really interesting thing. And I do think in terms of having these sorts of marquee events in the city of Ames, we are really lacking. We have Midnight Madness, that one has been brought up pretty frequently. That brings a lot of people to town. We have Iowa Games, but that's kind of more spread out. And that's about it, from my perspective. I guess I don't know how the audience feels. But in terms of the concerns, the conservation concerns raised at Ada Hayden, I consider myself a conservationist. I love that Ames has these incredible wild spaces. I've lived close to the Iowa State cross country course and also to Munn Woods. And yes, I think that these wild spaces need to be conserved, but they also need to be accessible. And I go out to Peterson Pits, I go out to McFarland Park. Each one of these places has good things about it. Some are more accessible to mobility limited people or bikes or horses or whatever. But I guess I don't feel that having this type of event in Ada Hayden is incompatible use. Ada Hayden, at the end of the day, while it does have a huge swath of conservation area, is still an urban park. And someday it will be connected to the urban bike loop, hopefully. and I think it's just, it's still part of the park system. It's still in the city. And fortunately / unfortunately, it's going to become more in the city than on the periphery of the city as Ames continues to grow to the north. And it is a balance. But I don't think that this event or other events like it are going to permanently alter the character of the park.
Yeah, I missed the last meeting, but obviously started paying a lot of attention to this when my email started filling up with everyone's letters and stuff like that. So that was really exciting to see that so many people were in support of this and cared enough to really like reach out to all of us, because not a lot of people do that. But also addressing the conservation issue, as one of our speakers said, that like there's enough of us, I think, even just in this room, that care about Ada Hayden and want to make sure it's upkept, that will be there at the event volunteering to make sure that people are cleaning up after themselves, taking care of the park. So I'm not too concerned about that either.
I'm not sure who this question needs to be directed to, but so a few years ago when I was in college, I did an internship out in a suburb of Chicago, and one of my events to put on was a triathlon for youth and adult people. But one of our facilities had an indoor pool, and the swimming portion was done in an indoor pool, and then they bike and ran in the neighborhood. And I mean, we worked with the local police department to block off roads and things like that. But I was just curious why we can't do it in an indoor pool. Why does it have to be at Ada Hayden?
Or an outdoor pool,
Correct. Yeah.
because we would have one at that time.
Right.
Good question.
Yeah.
Yeah, of course, Alex, please.
Yes. So pool swims are an alternative in the wintertime. They are used for triathlons, but the purest form of the sport is in the lake. It's open water swimming. It's not following the black line on the bottom of the pool. It's, swimming straight, going around the buoys, you're swimming with other people. When you're swimming in a pool, you're swimming by yourself. You can't hop out and go straight to your bike. You have to negotiate a building. The lake is where all triathletes want to be. If they're going to a pool, it's because there are no outdoor options, or it's too cold, or there's a foot of ice on the lake.
Well, this triathlon that I put on was in August. So,
Mhm.
I mean, granted, it's in a suburb of Chicago, so there isn't very many lakes.
Right. Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
But
I'm also familiar with the one that uses an indoor pool during the summer event, and yeah, so it is an option. It's just not your preferable option. Is really.
We don't put on any races in pools. We never have. They do exist. You're talking about a very small fraction of the over 4,300 races that are sanctioned by USA Triathlon in the nation.
Keith mentioned the possibility of this being a qualifying event for other events. Does this being a qualifying event require that it be held in an open water swim?
That's a good question. I never put on a pool swim, so I don't know the answer to that. I do know that the lake swims, the top 10% of each age group would qualify for a national competition. A regional event would qualify the top 25% of each age group for the national competition. There are also now state championships, which would qualify a higher percentage as well.
What again is the major attraction to swimming in a lake as opposed to an indoor facility? I mean, just why prefer one over the other?
Right.
Other than, the fact you're like settled in an urban area.
Yeah. The other thing about the pool, it's a bottleneck. So there's only so many lanes in the pool. So you can have 8 people swimming at a time. And if you have 200 people like this race swimming in a pool, that means your event that starts at 8 and gets done at 11 is now starting at 8 and getting done at 2 p.m. or 3 p.m. Consuming more resources, consuming the pool up more, bikes on the road longer, and runners out running. You know, hopefully it's on a trail, not on a street, but they're going to be out there longer. So, and to, you know, answer your question about the qualifying thing too, like for qualifying events, you want to not turn away people. When you have a limited resource like a pool and you have to get everybody through there, those events often will have a cap on the number of people that they can have. And, you know, somebody who might be qualified or able to qualify for a regional or national event might not be able to participate because they didn't sign up soon enough. Whereas in a lake, you can get more people in quick and get them out quick and not impact the community in a larger way.
Any other questions for Alex?
Well, I guess just to kind of follow up, I guess what I was getting at with my question is there because you prefer outdoor events, is there a particular sensitivity to the fact that it's outdoor and the fact that there is an environment that has to be considered and all that stuff? So I'm just trying to see if there's a compatibility between triathlon races and, you know, like what was called the wild character of an environment.
Are you asking if the triathlon in the lake would damage the wild character of the lake?
Essentially.
We don't think so. I mean, we're sticking to the paved surfaces. We're not going on the upland trail, which are not paved and probably where most wildlife is viewed, or people that are looking to get away, you know, from the other users of the park. I think most people that come there to recreate are staying on the paved trails and in the parking lots. And the people that are looking for wildlife experience are on the upland trail or in the trees, you know, looking for those nature experiences, or kayaking on the lake, perhaps, which is where we would not be.
Where do most people view spectators?
Usually by transition area,
Okay.
which we have moved since we first started talking to Keith to the pavement for two reasons. One, it's not going to be on the grass. If the grass is wet, and people are walking on it, it's going to make it muddy. And also from the para triathlete, you know, coming out of the water and going on paved surfaces to transition and exiting on the bike. Whereas if you have to negotiate grass or a soggy surface, it's going to not be as desirable.
Okay, thank you.
And when you look at pools too, and you talk about paratriathlon too, you have stairs to negotiate, you know, all the things that come with being inside a building that someone would have to, a paratriathlete would have to negotiate that an able-bodied athlete would not have to.
So stairs are not part of your proposal anymore because they were the last time.
Stairs.
You had showed those photographs of like a platform that was used, or like a platform.
Oh, that might have been William that showed that to you.
That was William. That was just an example of different stuff.
A transitional.
That was not
Yeah.
part of
Okay.
it.
Yeah, we didn't really speak of transition.
Right. That was, I think, what William had brought up as an example. Ours is to walk down the boat ramp. When you get knee deep or waist deep, start swimming, come back.
Seems a lot more simple.
Yeah. When you get to that spot, put your feet down and go hop on your bike and pedal.
Well, I'd just like to thank you for all of the work in producing
Yeah,
that. And,
thanks for the
I
opportunity.
know that there's a lot of man hours that went into that.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Yep. Anything else?
Yeah, Wolfgang.
I'd like to correct
Thank you,
what
Alex.
said.
Come to the podium, yeah.
Wildlife users will use the west side of the paved trails on the west side of the lakes because it goes around the wetlands. So it's not just the upland trails that wildlife users are using, but you can use the whole circle around it.
Okay.
Because there's a lot of ponds and pools that are accessible from there. So I just
Sure.
wanted to clarify.
But that's pretty far from the swimming event, because the
Yeah.
swimming event would be on the
Is it
east
just
side.
on the North Lake then?
The swimming event is on the northeast corner
Oh,
of
okay.
that lake.
Yeah, so that would be
Yeah.
away from that, right?
Do you want to come up to the podium and give
Okay.
your name and address?
Okay.
My name's Kelly Welsh Wingate, and I live at 1117 Wilson Avenue in Ames, Iowa. I just wanted to answer the question about the pool swim versus lake swim from an athlete's point of view. There's no way I'd do it as a pool swim. Why? I mean, why go swim laps? You can do that any day. One of the reasons you do a triathlon is to get out there and like compete against the other people in the lake at the same time, and just to compete in an environment that you can't usually get into. You can go swim laps any day. I mean, yeah, it's just not an event that I would do. And I would guess you could ask for a show of hands and you might get a similar, perception.
Thank you.
Did you have another comment, Christina? Okay.
Okay.
That's great.
All right, do we,
Different challenge, swimming in the open water, and that's part of what attracts us to triathlon is the challenge. And I always swim in the pool when we have to, and it's too cold to swim outside. We'd always prefer to swim in open water.
okay. Is there any other discussion? Do we have a motion?
I move alternative 1.
I will second.
Okay, we have a motion for alternative 1, which would be to approve the request. Is this still Iowa Multi-Sport? Is that correct? Okay. To approve the request to Iowa Multi-Sport, which would then waive the no swimming rule at Ada Hayden Heritage Park in the North Lake from 7 a.m. to 10 a.m. on Sunday, June 30th, 2019, to allow them to have their triathlon event. It would also give permission to Iowa Multi-Sport to enter Ada Hayden Heritage Park starting at 4 a.m. on June 30th as well to begin their event setup. Do we have any more discussion? All right, seeing none, all those in favor of the motion of approving alternative 1, please say aye.
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 Opposed?
Nay.
So
5-2.
5-2, and the motion passes. And I'd like to, I guess, thank everyone for coming. And you can stay if you'd like. And
This is Ed's last meeting.
it's my last meeting.
We thought you were all here for him.
Yeah, right. Anyway, thank you all.
Thank you.
And have a great rest of your evening.
All right, we'll move on to
Go on.
the next commission action form. If you can just have everybody be quiet.
If you could please just lower your voice until you get outside. We're going to continue our meeting here. Thank you.
So the next one is commission action form for Ames Little League agreement. Joshua?
For the last few years, City of Ames has had an agreement with Ames Little League in regards to the use of the Little League fields at Brookside Park as well as the former high school field since the city removed the field at North River Valley Park. New to the agreement this year is they requested the addition of an equipment box to be placed near fields 8 and 9, which are the North 2 Little League fields, to place items in. What we put in the agreement was that the city would have to approve the size, the color, and the location prior to placement. So there's been no issues or concerns the last few years. It's been a great agreement, and I look forward to and continue to enjoy working with the Ames Little League. So my staff recommendation is alternative 1.
Do we have any discussion? Sorry, I'm trying to find it. You screwed me all up when you changed it. So, do we have any other discussion? Okay.
I make a motion to approve alternative number 1.
Second.
Okay. We have a motion and a second to approve alternative 1, which would be to approve the agreement with the Ames Little League regarding the uses of fields 7, 8, and 9 at Brookside Park from April 1st, 2019 through November 1st of 2019. Is there any other discussion? Seeing none, motion passes.
You know.
You got to vote.
Oh my gosh. Hey, you know, I broke open the seating meals. The first one, I'll do it again.
Okay.
So, all those in favor, please say aye.
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 Opposed? Sorry about that. Motion passes. Thank you.
The next item, commission action form for Ames Cyclone Aquatics Club agreement. And Kelly?
I've got that one.
So in front of you, commissioners, is the agreement for Ames Cyclone Aquatics Club, better known as ACAC, to use the municipal pool year-round and the Furman Aquatic Center 50-meter pool from May 27th through August 2nd of 2019. This agreement is very similar to agreements you've seen in the past. The only change we made was on recommendation of the city's risk manager was upping the insurance requirements of $1 million, and that's any agreement going forward for the city. ACAC had no issues with this. They had more than that anyways, I believe. So that is the only change to the agreement. Each athlete is required to buy a pool pass for each respective swim season. So they buy a summer pool pass, and then they also buy a school year swim pass too as well. So staff's recommendation is alternative number 1, and to approve the agreement with ACAC for use of the municipal pool year round and the 50-meter basin of the Furman Aquatic Center from May 27th through August 2nd of 2019.
I move alternative 1.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. For alternative 1, what? Which is to approve the agreement for the Cyclone Aquatics Club for the use of municipal pool from May 1st, 2019 through April 30th, 2020, and then the 50-meter basin at Furman Aquatic Center from May 27th through August 2nd, 2019. Do we have any discussion?
Just to say that I need to abstain from the vote for a conflict of interest.
Okay. Any other discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? With one
Abstention. One abstention.
one abstention. Okay. So motion passes.
Okay. All right, so the next item is just an update on the Healthy Life Center. So a few things have happened, since our last meeting. So we did ask by the end of March, and we kind of talked about this with at the January 31st meeting for everybody to kind of come back and say, well, actually at the end of February, to come back and say, here's what we're going to do. So that has been done. And Mary Greeley Medical Center, their board of trustees did approve putting in $7 million. So formally $7 million into the project. The Heartland Senior Services, right now, they have formally approved giving $3.5 million, to the project. So those two organizations that do formal agreements. Also, I think I mentioned this last time with the university, Iowa State University, with Regent's approval. They are going to recommend to lease the land, to the city. Rather than have the city pay for it. So that's a savings of $300,000. Also mentioned that, the fundraising is approximately $6 million. The goal was 18, so that's a $12 million shortfall. So a couple of things with Story County. The original discussion was for $3 million for capital and then up to $200,000 for operational expenses. And they brought that up for discussion on March 12th at their meeting. And at that time, there was a motion that was made for that dollar amount. And there was a second as a courtesy to have discussion. Through discussion, that motion was defeated 2-1. So we left that meeting without any commitment from Story County. At the same meeting, they also then did discuss about potentially doing a bond referendum for the $3 million for the capital side. And there were some concerns regarding, and they wanted to do the vote at the same time that the city would do a vote for a bond referendum. So City of Ames residents would be voting for two measures. Story County or outside of Ames in Story County would be just voting for the one measure. City manager did express that there are some concerns regarding doing that because here's what the cost of the project is, and not knowing if Story County would be giving funds or not would be very difficult to do. So they said they would have more conversation again on March 26th, which was just 2 days ago. At that meeting, they also did talk about TIF funding instead of potentially just general fund dollars for the funding request. So what we did is we went back with a funding request of $2 million for capital and $100,000 for operational expenses annually with an escalator annually of 3%. There was a discussion, quite a bit of discussion on the TIF financing of whether or not the money was there or not there in regards to do they have capacity or not having the capacity. And then they kind of went into the request. So through that discussion with it, the Supervisor Olson did wind up making a motion for $2 million and $100,000 with the 3% escalator for operational expenses. Rick Sanders, or Supervisor Sanders, did approve that motion. And then there was conversation or discussion regarding whether or not we should just do, or they should just do $100,000 flat for operation expenses annually. Or should there still be tied to 30% usage and so on? So if there's no deficit, there's no subsidy needed, then they wouldn't pay anything. So that was kind of a question and a concern that they had asked. But Supervisor Olson thought that it was fair to do the 100,000 with the 3%. So they did take a vote on that, and that did pass 2-1. So Supervisor Sanders and Olson voted yes, and Supervisor Merkin voted no. So now they'll just be working through how do they make that funding happen. So with what I said, with all of that, so the city already has $2 million roughly that they're going to be adding in from other sources, most notably bequest from Guido Winokur. So initially the bond referendum was going to be for $15 million. If council wants to make this happen, there's some options that they will have. It's either looking at the design and working with the consultant to come up with some potential savings with design, also savings from an operational standpoint. And then the other thing would be to continue, try to do some fundraising, getting additional dollars, or increase the dollar amount of the bond referendum. So April 9th at that city council meeting, there will be a report given to city council, giving them all the information in regards to the funding that has been committed and what the shortfall is, what saving opportunities there are. And then at that meeting, the council will give staff direction regarding a bond and a date and so on. They will not make a decision in regards to the language of a bond or anything, but and council at that meeting could say, we want a bond for this amount, make cuts to get to that, or we're going to bond for this amount, or they could potentially say, you know what, if we're going to have to bond for that much, we just don't think it's a viable project anymore, and they could say, no, we're not going to move forward. So those are all options that we may hear from City Council on the 9th. We're hoping that City Council will give direction to staff to get the language and move forward with a bond referendum vote. And if they do that, then that will be brought back before council probably sometime in May with it. So that's what's happened, since our last meeting. Okay. Any questions?
No.
No. All right. Good. So project updates, Homewood Clubhouse. This was another one since our last meeting. We did take it to City Council, and with that, we did share comments from the commission. Also did share the LEED certification cost versus the going with kind of reducing the carbon footprint. And long story short, they gave direction to staff to move forward with the current design, incorporate as many energy efficiency items that we can, and do not worry about the LEED certification. So that's what we are doing. And with it, so the consultant is working on the final plans and specifications, and right now it looks like those probably would go to council sometime, hopefully the first part of May, for approval, and then we could get those out for bid. And isn't that right? It's May, right?
May 14th.
Yeah. Yep. So take it in May and then bring it back, and then hopefully start construction at the end of summer. So thank you for your work on that and guidance. Edwards Park, we did have a meeting with Edwards Park neighborhood, and we really went from Highland to North Dakota, and then Lincoln Way to Munn Woods, McCarthy Lee, and so on. And we sent out about 1,500 roughly postcards, and we had 20 people show up for the meeting. But one of the things, and we'll give you more information as we get closer, but we'll now hire a consultant to start working on a master plan. What we did do with them is we went through and we did have conversation, regarding, first off, what was their vision for the park? Secondly, what types of activities happen there now, or what they would like to see happen there? And then third, what amenities do you want to see in the park to be able to accomplish those activities and that vision? So came up with, what was there, 18 items, maybe something like that, 18, 20 items. So they came up with that, and then what we did is we did just a little scoring thing. We lettered all of the items, and then what we had them do is give us, in preference, what's their first priority, second priority, all the way through number 10 priority. And with the information that they gave us, their top 4 priorities, and I should say also, is we did talk about the spray pad. It's a separate item, but we did mention it to them that we looked at all of our parks, and we're going to be having some conversation community-wide in regards to the splash pad. But Edwards is one of the parks, so if we're having this conversation, what do you think about having a splash pad there? Some really liked it. Some said, well, is that going to bring more people? And would this now be a community park instead of a neighborhood park? And we said, no, it would still be classified as a neighborhood park because of the size and so on, but it would have amenity that would, service the entire community. But so we had good conversation. What they came up with is their top 4 items. Number 1 was a walking path around the park. And we'll say playground equipment, that was not on the list because there already is playground equipment, there. The second item was open space. They wanted to keep as much open space as possible, whether it was open space for playing or open space under the trees and so on. That was their second. Third priority was a shelter. And then the fourth was the splash pad, and which thought was very interesting. So we're gonna go through, like I said, hire a consultant, start working on that, and in the meantime, we'll also be having a community-wide meeting and discussion on the splash pad and look at other park locations and see what people think as well. So, any questions on that? No. All right, then the last one, well, not quite the last one, but correspondence. I'm not going to go through all those 75 plus emails and everything else. So there were a lot of them. But other than that, there wasn't any other correspondence that need to share. So the next one is, as we mentioned earlier, this is Ed's last official meeting.
It is.
So he was recognized this at noontime during the boards and commissions luncheon. And Ed has been on the commission. He filled a vacancy and he served 2 years, and then he came on as got appointed to a 3-year term, and then got appointed to another 3-year term. And this is the end of the line.
It
for
is
Ed
it.
as far as the Parks and Recreation
It is.
Commission. By code, we cannot ask him to or reappoint him any longer. So I just wanted, for those watching at home, some of the things during Ed's tenure, during those 8 years, some things that have happened. One, we had Northridge Heights Park, came online and was developed and opened up as a park. We had Roosevelt Park. And that was working with the school district and getting the land transferred to the city, and working with the neighborhood there, the Friends group there to get that park developed. There was it was always smooth sailing, right, Ed?
Smooth.
So there are some major things that took place during Ed's tenure. One was the Miracle Park, and just working through that whole thing, and hopefully maybe the next meeting or in May I'll be coming back with an update and more definitive timeline on things. But that was a big thing, working through and with your leadership helping the commission and staff listen to the public. And I think Alan mentioned it during his comments that sometimes it's a struggle to balance differing opinions and trying to find out what is the best for the community, and you helped us through that. The naming policy, that was another one when didn't have a naming policy and needed one before we made a decision about naming the skate park. So those are a couple of things. The renovation of the skate park was another thing, and there's other things that have happened in conversations that we've had, and obviously too, just the whole thing with the Healthy Life Center, and helping with that whole process, starting with hey, we need a new indoor pool, and then we need an indoor aquatic center, and then morphing into the whole Healthy Life Center concept and things. So it's all those items are during your tenure.
Hiring of you.
Yeah, that's a small part of it. So, but you're right, and there's been a lot of. We were just talking to somebody at conference yesterday, and out of our 25 full-time staff since 2013, when I became director, 19 of our staff out of those 25, 19 are either in new positions or new to the department. So we only have 6 people that are still in the same position as they were prior to 2013. That's a lot, and all of what you do, not just what you do, but as the commission, helps us with how we do things as a department and what we do as a direction. So what we want to do, Ed, is we just want to say thank you, for everything that you've done. So that, and then just a little token of your appreciation. If you want us to stand up, we can do that. And how about everybody? Just come on in Maybe we put the chairs up.
Oh, my nameplate? Yeah, that sounds great.
Here, let's do the chairs on the back side. And come on in.
Yeah.
Ed needs to be in front.
No, no one
Come
that's
on in.
Do not. I know I don't like to be center of attention.
You're literally in the center right now.
1, 2, 3.
Okay.
1, 2, 3. Perfect. Thanks.
Thank
All
you.
right.
Thank
Well,
you.
congratulations.
All. Thank you all.
Yeah, thank you for your service. So any last words of wisdom, or you want to wait till the very end?
Oh, I don't know.
You can think about it.
That's okay. It's been a great time. I mean, obviously, I've been around this long. But, just, I don't know. I think, we all do such a great job, and just keep listening. When I first came here, I thought, I'll tell you, I thought, oh, wow, that's going to be fun. And I remember coming to Nancy Carroll and going, if you ever want me to help plant trees, like really, I thought that's how simple it was going to be. And, oh, wow. have I learned. And I think we just got a little taste of it tonight. But man, we have done a lot of things, and it's really to like all the staff. And I know sometimes we agree to disagree, but then also I've served with all of you great people, but many before me too. So always think of them too. So.
Yeah, and there's just in regards to the people, I think when you first started, this was probably what it looked like.
Yeah.
Staff, and
right?
Commissioners.
Yes.
And in your time, we've even had to open up the
Courtroom.
hall and go into the courtroom.
We did. But I learned a lot from that exercise, and I hope that it's made some of our other decisions easier.
It has.
Yeah. So
it has.
Great.
Thank you.
So thank you. Thank you.
You have made it the fun commission.
Yeah. Anybody else have comments for Ed?
Thanks for not being a scary chair on my first year here.
The farthest thing from. Thank you all, though.
Good.
You're not done yet.
Oh, I gotta keep going. Oh, monthly report. Joshua.
Staff starting to get out in the park system. Restrooms, hopefully the water will be turned on mid-May, we're starting to get into that process right now, but it's all based on the warm temperature. So just be patient with us, and we'll get out there and get things going. So
We are close to Homewood Golf Course opening. We're not saying an official date yet. The weekend looks a little dicey with some snow and rain in our forecast, but please check our Facebook page. We hope to be open here in early April. www.amesparkrec.org. We will post a message on there when we are officially open.
And you had drop-in during spring break, right?
We did. We
How
had
was
drop-in
that?
fitness classes. So thank you to all the fitness participants who brought in canned goods for the food pantry. Great turnout. So some new classes and some new faces in classes. So hopefully they'll register for a program or two.
Awesome. That's it for you guys. Any other commissioner comments? Seeing none? All right. Your next meeting. You've been
waiting 8 years for that, haven't you?
It's so nice. I don't know what I'm going to do with my Thursdays anymore.
You're going to sit at home watching this.
Yes, I will.
You come back like Alan.
Yes, you will see me again. I'm sure of that. Our next meeting is your next meeting is on April 18th at 4:00 here. So I'll take a motion for adjournment.
So moved.
Is it mine still?
It's yours.
All right. Thank you all.
Thank you much. Sure. Your last official duty.
Oh, man. Hey, Keith.